Welcome back to Got No Control podcast. I'm your host, RONEK. And before I introduce my special guest, I want to give a shout out to Overspray Supply Shop here in the city of Pomona for powering this episode and allowing us to shoot this episode inside their compound. Make sure to check them out if you're in the city of Pomona and need some graffiti supplies, art supplies, or you want just a cool t-shirt. Also, I want to invite you guys to head over to gotnocontrol.com and check out our official merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, and much more. This helps us to have more financial freedom to be able to come in and bring these episodes and content for you guys. It allows us to travel and so much more. So if you can, head over to gotnocontrol.com and check that out. And today in the city of Pomona, I have the pleasure of sitting down next to a guy that needs no introduction. KEO, how you doing today, brother?
Peace, RONEK. My name is KEO, KEO, from Brooklyn, New York, and it's an honor to be here, Pomona, California, with my man RONEK.
I appreciate the opportunity, brother. There's so much to get into, man. You're just a guy that's full of history, and again, it's going to be a good time, so let's jump into this. I want to start by just diving into a little bit about what is home to KEO and how was it growing up for you?
Well, like a lot of major cities in America, my home has changed. It's become gentrified. It's not what it was when I was growing up. So where I lived in Brooklyn, where I was raised, is now very expensive. It's, what do you call it, yuppies, hipsters.
Okay.
So, but when I was growing up, it was the hood. So I've seen a lot of change. And if you live long enough, you get to see change. And now I believe it goes in cycles. It's going to come back to a period of poverty. You know, that's what they do. They build it up, then they destroy it.
100%. Being from Brooklyn, right? What do those early days look for KEO like? You know, coming up as a child, did you have any influences as far as anything in general, or was it just kind of like you were just left alone to figure yourself out type thing?
You talking about graffiti and street, activities. I had a lot of older mentors that I looked up to. First of all, I'm the middle child. My brother is 4 years older than me. So him and his friends, when I'm 8, 9, they're already 12, 13, and getting into whatever they're getting into. So I was able to look at his friends for what kind of music they listened to. They started riding skateboards. They all started writing graffiti. Yeah. And this is, the mid 70s. I'm a little kid. But also in my neighborhood, I had older cats that I looked up to, just influences not only in graffiti, but just in how to carry yourself as a man, how to conduct yourself in the streets. You know what I mean?
100%. I'm a fair believer that those surroundings and people that are in your early days of life kind of mold you to become the individual that you become down the road, right?
100%.
Coming up in this environment that you were coming up in Brooklyn, how was the environment itself? Like, was it something that was very cultural, or do you come from a specific side of town where things were a little different than the outer world in New York?
Okay, so Brooklyn is a huge place, and there's a lot of different neighborhoods. And the further out you go, when you get to like East New York and Brownsville, it's still a lot of poverty, and it's mostly housing projects. But where I lived in downtown Brooklyn is close to Manhattan. You could walk across the Brooklyn Bridge, and we did when we were kids. And we have Fulton Street, which is the shopping center. So you had people from all over coming to our neighborhood. And I say it was like Harlem in that they had 125th Street, we had Fulton Street. You had projects, you had poverty, crime, drugs, all the ills of a ghetto, but you also had artists and jazz musicians and famous, So you could be on a nice block and turn the corner and be on a dangerous block. We had everything within walking distance. So very close to me were fancy neighborhoods like Brooklyn Heights and Park Slope. It just so happened where I lived right in between two housing projects, Wyckoff and Gowanus. And it wasn't a desirable place to live back then. They were giving away houses for $1 if you could fix it up.
Oh,
You know what I
wow.
mean? So now those same houses go for $5 million,
Gotcha.
and it's changed a lot. But I was fortunate to live there. Like I said, there was artists, jazz musicians, all kinds of cultural influences, all kind of things going on. It was a hub, a center of culture, art, music, fashion, everything.
And is this something that you're observing as a child, like, coming up, or you're watching all this? Are you kind of like absorbing this
100%.
and learning how to understand it and like, oh, what is this and what is that?
100%. Because you have to understand, I'm born in 1967.
Okay.
Right? So by the time I'm 10 years old and starting to care about girls and fashion and all these things, maybe even younger, 8, 9, you start looking at this stuff, styles were changing. It's a radical change in time. You're going from the hippie era
Yeah.
into the funk and disco, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So the clothing styles that my parents had and the musics they listened to were outdated.
Gotcha.
I wanted to learn the newest stuff, so I'm looking at what my friends had. And we weren't very wealthy. We were poor. So I had to wear hand-me-downs from my brother.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing old clothes that are now out of style.
Gotcha.
So I began to, when you're a kid, you think if you have the right brand of sneakers or the right kind of pants that you'll fit in, people will accept you. Today I understand that it's, if you're a herb, if you're an asshole, it doesn't matter what kind of clothes you got on. But back then it seemed very important to me. So, yeah, I was into all of that. I couldn't play sports very well. I wasn't a great musician. So I started looking for where was my niche to fit in.
Now,
You know?
where do I belong into all this creativity?
Right. So I wasn't the toughest guy. I couldn't fight the best. You know what I mean? So what was going to be my lane? And I was really good at art from a young kid. I never was not drawing.
Okay.
But drawing was kind of looked at as nerdy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then I saw graffiti, and I'm talking the very earliest graffiti in New York that I saw. It had a respect. Those guys were mysterious. They were like superheroes. You didn't know who they really were, who did it, how they
Yeah.
did it. You know what I mean?
It's like this untold thing that just pops out, and you're like,
Right.
who did that?
Right. So the schoolyard where I went to PS 38,
Yeah.
right? And Jean-Michel Basquiat went to my school. Houdini, the twins, Ecstasy and Dynasty, the
Yeah, yeah.
Fletcher twins, rest in peace, Ecstasy. They were there. There was a lot of creative people there at the same time as me. But the school system was broke. All of New York was bankrupt in the 70s.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a basketball net. The rim was bent. It was all concrete and broken glass. It looked, it looked fucked up. Pardon my language. But I can curse on here?
Yeah, yeah, most
Okay.
definitely.
It looked fucked up. So when somebody came over the weekend and painted all these colors on the handball court with Mickey Mouse smoking a spliff and, oh shit, we came in Monday morning. Who did it? How did they do it? You know
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean? And all the kids were talking about it. And I realized that this was something where maybe I could make a contribution. You know what I mean?
Something where it's like maybe it's worth giving it a shot to contribute to what this is.
Yeah.
I wanted to take a small rewind, right? So you mentioned that you were always drawing, right, as a child.
Yes.
How did that introduction of drawing enter your realm? Like, how did it go about? Was it just like picking up a crayon and doodling around, or was there something behind it?
Well, my father is a painter. My
Okay.
father's an oil painter. Like I told you, my parents were hippies, right? And my father was a painter. My mother, rest in peace, she died when I was very young, but she used to make jewelry.
Okay.
So I lived in a household full of creative people and art supplies, and there were books on art, and this is what I had around me. So it was just natural. Maybe I didn't get the latest toys. I didn't have. I remember I asked my father for a kind of like a toy gun that all the
Yeah.
kids had. I think it used to shoot these little yellow frisbee things. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, he built me one out of wood for Christmas.
Oh, okay.
He made a wooden gun for me. And I was like, oh, this is a piece of shit. Now I look like, yo, he made that by hand. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I wanted the plastic one from the store. I wanted the one all the other kids had. So we didn't have money for a lot of fancy toys, but he made sure that I had art supplies.
Gotcha.
So most kids, you know, they'll draw on the walls with crayons or whatever.
Yeah.
I never stopped, man.
So it's fair to say that your father played a big part in your introduction of actually sitting down and drawing.
Yeah, 100%. To understand, looking at him, I knew that this was more than just a plaything. He did this for a living. He did this seriously. That this was something you could devote your life to. You understand?
Yeah.
So other kids looked at you know, a coloring book or whatever at like a toy. I saw that this was an actual life path that you could follow.
To your earning knowledge, brother, what was the emotion and gratitude that you would receive from having a complete piece of artwork that you did as a child where like you felt it was done? What was that satisfaction for you? Like, oh, it's done. I got one.
That's a deep question. I'm glad you mentioned gratitude because I was really hard on myself. I still can be sometimes. And I never liked my work. I never thought it was good enough, right?
Yeah.
And I often didn't finish pieces. I would give up. I was like, it's trash, no good. You know what I mean? I crossed my own shit out. So I was my worst critic. And other people would tell me, yo, that's fresh. Yo, you're good. You got talent. And I think that it has to be a balance because it's good to be critical of yourself because it pushes you to improve, right?
Yeah.
I think there's still room for me to improve. So I'm still practicing. But you also have to have enough confidence in yourself to finish the piece, complete it, and put it out in front of the world.
100%.
So a lot of times you'll see cars, like if you look at the book Subway Art, Henry
Yeah.
Chalfant, you see people wrote something on there, an excuse. Oh, it was too dark. We got raided. I was dusted. PJ shut off the lights.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would do these great pieces, but I would make an excuse and tell
Gotcha.
people, oh man, the paint fucked up. You know what I mean? It was too cold. Something I always had a reason.
It was too high. I couldn't reach.
Yeah, the cops were coming because I didn't think it looked good enough to just say, yo, there it is, boom. And I still feel that way sometimes. So it's still a challenge for me. Now I show paint. I had a huge show in London, right?
Yeah.
One man show, all my paintings. And it's like you're walking in there butt naked. People you don't know are looking at your work and examining it. And, you know, they'll like it or they won't like it. I have to be satisfied with my work.
I feel like at the end of the day, we could be our biggest critiques, right?
Yeah.
To ourselves. Because it's like,
100%.
even as a writer, right? You might develop a dope hand style, which is your signature, and it's still part of who you are. But you can't take the time to soak it in and be like, oh, I developed my tag. You're so worried of, now I got to get to a throw up. Now I got to get to the bubble. Now I got to get to a bomb. Now I got to get to the piece. And I feel like those baby steps sometimes are neglected just because the focus and the energy on being better, that it's sometimes okay to just be like, I did a dope tag.
Right. So I had to learn the difference between style and technique.
Yeah.
Because my technique, I'm always practicing, always developing, can always get better.
Yeah.
But my style is me. That's who I am. So I learned this in boxing. Okay? Because your style is your style. And it's based on, oh, you're tall and slim and got a long reach, or you're short and you know what I mean?
A
You're
southpaw.
fast, you got good legs, right?
Yeah.
So I can't look at somebody else's style and say, oh, I want to be Mike Tyson peekaboo, or I want to be shoulder roll, right?
Yeah.
My style is my style, but my technique can always improve. I need to practice that. I need to drill it every day. So my tag is my tag, right? I'm never going to write like Blade or Jester or Chaka from LA or, you know what I mean? My hand doesn't, my body doesn't move the way theirs does. That's something in your physical. But I can improve my tag. I can get better at paint handling, control, learn to use different kinds of caps, go faster, slower, you understand? If I write that same tag 50,000 times, it's going to develop. Just like your signature, it becomes your own. Right?
100%.
When you do it naturally, let it flow. Don't try to be someone else. So when I was a kid, I loved a writer named Jester.
Okay.
And Jester did his E a certain way, and it was perfect to me. And I spent so long, and I was forcing it, and it never came out right. And I would get more and more mad. The more frustrated I got because my E didn't look like Jester's, the worse it got because I was getting angry, right? And once I got loose and said, fuck it, this is my E. Yeah. However it comes out, that's how it comes out. Then it begins to flow naturally. So I had to learn the difference between what's style and what's technique. Because I can be critical of my technique and say, you know what, I need to practice more. I'm rusty.
Yeah.
But my style, I can't look and say, I want to be you. I can't be RONEK, and RONEK can't be KEO.
You're 100% right. And in my personal opinion, I think that's the hardest part of being an artist, right? Like finding your defining style of who you are. Because entering the graffiti world, like, you know, you could be dope at lettering, right? But what is your style? What makes you different? What makes you appealing to the everybody out there?
I give you a perfect example. My man Case 2, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
From Style Wars.
Yeah.
So he had his own style, computer rock, and everybody tried to copy this style.
Yeah.
Not understanding, Case 2 was born right-handed, and when he was a kid, he was in an accident. He lost his right leg and his right arm. His whole right side of his body was burnt off.
Yeah.
He had a prosthetic leg, and he taught himself how to paint with his left hand. So my style is never going to look like that. That's uniquely his.
100%.
Right? So embrace who you are and what you got to work with. And accepting yourself with whatever limitations you got is where you're going to find your own style.
100%. Like I totally agree with you. Like accepting what you have and who you really are will take you farther than trying to be what that other person already is, right? It makes you different. It makes you unique. And it definitely will make you find what it is that you're looking for as far as an artist. I wanted to also dive into, brother, when it came to graffiti itself, how did graffiti stumble into your life?
Again, like I said, seeing it, when I was a very young kid, New York had a gang culture. The Tomahawks and Homicides and the Jolly Stompers. And in my neighborhood, we even had Chingaling Nomads. And all these gangs had a different style of writing.
Okay.
Which in LA, I'm sure you guys are familiar with. You have an old history with that. So that was the first stuff I saw. But it seemed kind of scary and violent to me because it told you, oh, you can't walk on this block. You know what I mean? These guys will fuck you up. So I knew it wasn't for me, but it was still fascinating, right?
Yeah.
And you needed to understand. It seemed to be a matter of survival for me to understand what that meant. Oh, don't go down that block, right? So
stay away from that place.
Right. Learning to decipher those marks on the wall was important from when I was a kid, and other kids would talk about it. Oh, yeah, that's the Tomahawks. They got war with the Homicides, right? So when I realized that there were guys writing, and this is the early 70s, man, mid 70s, there were guys writing who were not involved with violent gangs, who were just doing it creatively. That blew my mind. Wait a minute.
So they just wanted to be part of the gang to be creative?
No, they were not in the gang.
Oh, okay.
They were writing graffiti without gang affiliation. This was a brand new thing in New York.
What year was this?
Oh, I first noticed it mid 70s.
Okay, mid 70s.
I don't know. I'm probably 8, 9, 10 years old because the older cats were already talking about it. You know, the names on the wall was like Super Strut and Spin, and Stay High was a very well-known one. It had a little cartoon character next to it, you understand? That's 74. So by the bicentennial, which is 1976, I was obsessed with it. And during the bicentennial, a lot of cars were done with the red, white, and blue, the flag, and
Yeah.
I was seeing subway trains full color, and it was characters, and I was blown away. I knew this is what I wanted to do. I was too young to actually go out and do it, but I was practicing it on paper
Yeah.
and on the schoolyard and my school books and the slide and the monkey bars and wherever I could.
Yeah.
In my mind, I was already a graffiti writer.
This is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, but I'm like, 8, 9, 10 years old. So I would hang around the older cats and beg them to teach me, to take me with them. You know what I mean? So I was always bothering the older cats
Gotcha.
and pestering them and following behind them. So some of my brother's friends were already well-known graffiti artists with good style. And I'm talking about they were only in junior high school, so they're like 12, 13.
At this point, you guys already knew the terminology. There was already a terminology in place.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they didn't call it graffiti too much. They called it writing.
Writing.
We're writers. You know what I mean? Graffiti came later because journalists, so there was a writer named Norman Mailer
Okay.
who wrote one of the early articles on graffiti and then put out a book called The Faith of Graffiti. And journalists consider themselves writers, right?
Why is that?
Authors, writers.
Oh, okay.
It's a different kind of writing. So it was confusing to them, just like it's confusing to you.
Yeah.
Right? To call us writers. So they gave us the name graffiti artists or graffiti writers. But that wasn't terminology that we used early on. We called it writing or just rocking. He's rocking a piece. He's rocking a line. You know what I mean? We're rocking his name everywhere. So after those articles came out, and that was very early, The Faith of Graffiti and so forth, then kids adapted that word.
Graffiti.
Right. That was given to us by the media.
Gotcha.
We didn't choose that. But most cultures are like that. I don't think hip hop had a name until somebody wrote about it and said, what do you guys call it? You know what I mean?
100%.
They always want to name something in order to, oh yeah, this is the new thing. And then they can package it and sell it back to you.
Being a youngster and understanding the terminology, like you mentioned, it was given to you guys by these journalists to define the difference between a writer and a graffiti writer. Mm-hmm. You're tagging along with the older writers already established and already doing their thing and painting subways. At what point do they actually tell you, like, all right, little dude, come on, I'll take you under my wing?
They didn't at first. I had to kind of prove myself. Like, they would show me stuff, but they wouldn't take me with them. Okay. You have to understand, I was a very small, nerdy white kid with glasses. I was not an asset to anybody's crew.
Yeah.
Okay? And I wasn't very good at writing. So I wasn't a tough guy. There was no reason you want to bring me to the yard where you might get in a beef. I'm not helping you any, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I got
so,
you. I got you.
They would show me things, but they wouldn't bring me to the trains. So me and my friends my age, we had to start our own little crew. We began writing. We started in PS 38 schoolyard. I did my first pieces, just practicing. And that's when I met an older writer. His name was Ink 76, Peace Ink. He's still around. Good dude. And he was from a local gang called the FMDs.
The FMDs.
Yeah, they were, first they were called the Floor Master Dancers.
Yeah.
And then they became the Filthy Mad Dogs, like a MC gang, like motorcycle style.
Were gangs back then the same as like in the West Coast? Like, was it over territory over there? Like, kind of like this is my turf, get out of here type thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in that particular case, they started as a dancing crew, battling other dancing crews from other neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But then when it became violent, they stepped up into a gang.
Gotcha.
You understand? So, but yeah, it was neighborhood shit. And mostly just starting to try to protect their neighborhood from other blocks coming and robbing them, and you know what I mean, bullies coming from other places. So they don't start as violent criminals. They start just trying to, stick together and unite to protect their neighborhood. Right?
Protect one another and family members.
Yeah. Make sure nobody robs the old ladies from the block. You know what I mean? Snatch their purse or whatever. Run the drug dealers off the block.
Gotcha.
Yo, you can't sell dope over here. You know what I mean? It starts as a positive thing. Because like I said, in 77, New York was bankrupt. We didn't have police. They wouldn't come to my neighborhood.
Oh, wow. So if something was going on, like, hey, this guy just got hit or whatever, nobody would come.
I remember the adults saying that if you had a problem, if you were getting mugged, you had to call and say, officer down, officer shot, officer needs assistance. That was the only way they would respond.
Oh, wow.
If they thought it was one of their own. So that's a crime right there. You're making a false report, right?
Gotcha.
So kids looked out for themselves. But anyway, back to the story. My man came in the schoolyard while I was doing my piece. And I was all by myself practicing. And he was a grown-ass dude, gigantic, big dude. And I'm scared to death. But instead of robbing me or smacking me around or giving me a hard time, yo, what you write? And I told him, and this is pretty good. And he started giving me pointers, you know what I mean? And that was the first real cat, except for my brother's friends, you know what I mean? That gave me some positive feedback. Him and another cat from my block called CP3, Crazy Pito, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
And once they vouch for me, once they say, nah, he's cool, that's KEO, you know what I mean? At that time, I wasn't KEO yet. I was writing Dose, D-O-S-E. That's Dose. He's cool. He's from my block. Then all of a sudden, the world opens up to you because that guy is respected. So if he says, nah, he's with me, leave him alone. Now, I began to get down with real crews. And the first real crew to put me down was called TPC. And that was my boy Sake and Set 3. And they were riding on the F train at Fort Hamilton. So they took me with them early, young. And that's like 79 now.
How old are you at this point when you enter?
79 to 80. When I start riding on trains, I'm 12 and 13.
Okay. Prior to you, meeting these guys and joining these crews that are established and the world opening into you.
Yeah.
Were you already aware of the hip hop movement?
100%. Though I don't think it was called hip hop yet.
Okay.
Maybe in 79, when records started coming out, Sugar Hill Gang and all that, they were saying a hip hop, the hibbit to the hibbit. Before that, it wasn't really called hip hop.
Oh, okay.
It was just something in the neighborhood. Yo, they rocking the mic. Yo, the DJ's rocking. They rocking a party. And you would get little cassette tapes. They were bootleg tapes. Somebody snuck a tape recorder into the jam. Because it was something that was a live jam. If you weren't there to hear it, they didn't have records.
Oh, so people were going there with little tape recorders and record what the DJ was doing.
Bootlegging it.
And bootlegging and selling it.
And then they would make copies, and by the time you heard it, it was a copy of a copy of a copy, and you could barely understand it. It sounded terrible, but we listened, and it was real crackly.
For someone out there that will listen to this, will never have a chance like myself to experience something like that. Can you take me into like what it was to be there watching them, like, the early days of hip hop? Like these guys are right there, like, just scratching and doing their thing. Like how was the vibe and the atmosphere in there?
So I can't speak about the Bronx or Queens or anywhere else because I was too young to travel. But in my neighborhood, we had DJs and crews, and I lived right across the street from the schoolyard, PS 38, the school that I went to, where I told you Houdini went there, and Basquiat went there, and a lot of people went there. So I could look out of my window and see the jam, even before I was too young to go. And I snuck out and I went early. So they would steal the electricity or run an extension cord from Colony South Brooklyn houses, which was like, Colony House was like a community center.
Yeah.
Where at-risk kids, you could go play pool in there or whatever after school, stay out of trouble. So they would put the cord out the window to power the equipment. And dudes would carry these giant speakers. They made the speakers themselves, you know what I mean? Giant wooden boxes. And
So they were like kind of like manufacturing their own speaker.
all the equipment was like homemade bootleg stuff. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they would put fans on the equipment so it didn't overheat, like house fans.
Oh, like an actual like big fan.
Yeah. Like the regular fan from your crib, you know? And I remember very well DJ Stone and the Flamboyant Crew. And that's where the Fletcher twins, you know, Ecstasy and Dynasty first got their start. Before Houdini, they would get on the mic with DJ Stone.
DJ Stone.
Yep, that was our block. Every
Okay.
block had a sound system. So in Gowanus and Wyckoff, they had another one. In Red Hook, they had another one. And sometimes these crews would battle. So after the Atlantic Antic, which was a big street fair, they would have a jam in PS 38 Park. And to me, and there's a lot of talk now, I don't know if you follow this nonsense about who started hip hop. Was it black? Was Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans?
Oh yeah, I hear it a lot.
New York is everybody in the same neighborhood. At least my neighborhood was.
Yeah.
It's a small island. So it's not like here where you can live on this side of town and I live on that side and the railroad tracks in the middle and you never cross, right? There we were all jammed up together. So you're listening to their other people's music, you're hearing you're smelling their food, you see their dance, this how they dress, everything, right?
But it was all love, right? Because like it doesn't matter if you're white, black, brown, yellow, whatever. Everybody was getting coordinating because of this thing that everybody loved.
There's always been knuckleheads. There's
Yeah.
always been assholes. There's always been racist people. But hip hop, graffiti, it seemed to bring people together,
Gotcha.
okay? From different communities and cultures. And you got to understand, we were coming out of the civil rights era. I'm born in 1967. We were the first generation of busing. You know what busing was?
No.
They brought you from one neighborhood to go to school in another neighborhood to integrate the schools.
Oh, so they were really doing that.
Yes.
Oh wow.
They were forcibly integrating us. So we didn't have a choice in that.
You had to go.
Yeah. We could hate each other and fight every day, or we could learn how to get along and find some common ground. So when these DJs played in the park, you had the Puerto Rican outlaws, who a lot of them listened to heavy metal music.
Yeah.
They dressed like Hell's Angels. They didn't want to hear no disco.
They wanted
Right?
just heavy metal.
And then you had the black kids who like funk and disco, and then you had a few white boys, and you had cats who were into salsa, you had cats who were into reggae. So they found a little bit, if you notice hip hop music, they could play a rock and roll record, a salsa record, a reggae record, as long as it has a drum beat.
Yeah.
They blend one into another. So this way the DJ was able to play a little something for everybody and keep it blended smooth.
Yeah.
And that to me is what became hip hop. It's not from one thing or another. Okay? So yes, you could say all music starts in Africa, probably, right? All culture at one time, because the oldest bones known to man they found in Africa.
Okay.
So probably math and science and everything comes from Africa. But hip hop in particular started in New York. And it's nothing new. People were dancing before there was hip hop. People were writing graffiti before there was hip hop.
Yeah.
People were DJing before there was hip hop. Radio DJs, right? Disc jockeys at a party. But it was a way of doing these things.
Gotcha.
A style of dance, a style of playing music, a style of rapping. People have been rapping long before hip hop. So I can go and find you examples of early things that resemble rapping or resemble breakdancing, or we could talk about graffiti. People say, oh, it started in Egypt. Other people tell you, oh, it started in a cave in France.
Yeah.
Oh, it started in Philadelphia. Oh, it started in LA. Oh, it started in Mexico. they were all doing their thing. But what we're talking about is a particular style from New York.
100%.
Because when I got to LA in 1987, there were two different distinct things going on. In Chicago, same way. Philly, same way. They had their old school, like placas in LA,
Yeah.
been around since the 40s.
Yeah.
Maybe came from Mexico before that, who knows? That's one style of writing. But then you had dudes doing New York style, hip hop style. Philly, same thing. They had their Philly tall prints. Then you had dudes doing New York style. Chicago, same thing. They had gangster writing that had been there going back to the 30s.
Yeah.
But then you saw the New York influence. That's hip hop graffiti. That's something different.
How did that make you feel, though, knowing that what you were doing back home, not everybody's grabbing a piece of it and doing it in their own way?
It's a beautiful thing. See, there's two ways to look at it, right? You could say I'm a culture vulture, I'm stealing from you. Or you could say, wow, they're adding on, they're contributing something new.
Yeah.
So it's more about my attitude, how I present, right? Let's say Pomona has lowrider car culture.
Okay.
From Pomona, right?
Yeah.
That was not a New York thing. But
Okay.
now they do it all over the world.
Gotcha.
Okay? So I can make a lowrider with hydraulics drop up and down in Brooklyn. Now, am I going to pretend I invented it, or I'm going to pay homage
And enjoy it.
to where it came from?
Yeah.
So if I try to say, yo, nah, this is my idea, I came up with this, dudes are going to be mad. What are you talking about? We've been doing that in Pomona for years, right? So it's really about, I don't claim to have started anything. Because by the time I got into graffiti, I was already third, fourth generation, man. Dudes have been doing it long before me. And if you want to talk about whether it goes back to Egypt or the cavemen, I don't fucking know. I wasn't there. I can only speak on what I saw and what I experienced.
And what you were doing.
Right. We're going to talk about Egypt. I read in a book once, but maybe that was all bullshit. You know what I mean?
I could understand exactly what you mean. I mean, we really can't speak on what happened hundreds of years ago before us.
So I only try to speak about what I know. So I got to LA in 1987, right?
Okay.
I met Skill, Swan on the bench, waiting for the bus to pull in Hollywood.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the bus pulled up, and they all ran up and boom, 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 they call it mobbing.
Okay.
We didn't know about that in New York. They were the first ones to show me the scribe, how to scratch the windows. Now, they do that in New York. They scratch the windows on the trains and buses. They do that all over the world. I saw it here first, okay? Then I met a guy named Skate, CBS. Okay? So those are the cats I know. Who came before them? I can't speak on because I wasn't here.
Yeah.
I was in Brooklyn. I can only speak on my own experience, man.
What led you to Los Angeles?
I was what's the proper term for this? Fugitive from justice? A bail jumper?
Allegedly?
Yeah, well, there's a statute of limitations. Thank God, I don't have no paper on me now.
Yeah.
I don't think. I'm free and clear. But at that time, yeah, I had warrants. I was on the run. And I was already kind of a street guy in New York, so it was just natural for me to come here and be a street guy.
Gotcha.
And I had a squat in Hollywood first, and then I moved into the hills in Errol Flynn's estates in the Hollywood Hills.
And you still kept painting while you were out here?
Yeah.
To your knowledge, like, you say you met Skill, Swan, and Skate, but did you get to kind of hang out with them and paint with them?
Yeah, 100%. Me and Skate painted a lot. Rest in peace, Rob.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, with another kid from Queens. He was another runaway from New York that wrote Shem. Shem.
Okay.
So I put Skate down in my crew, X-Men, and he put me down in CBS.
Okay.
And Yeah, we did a lot, but mostly we just got high. We had a lot of fun, bro.
So
You know?
did you have the opportunity to like visit what was out here as far as yards and stuff?
Oh, 100%.
Is there anything in particular that kind of stood out when you were out here your first time around?
Well, you know, in New York, when we say we're going to the yard, they mean the train yard.
Yeah.
Where they lay up the trains. So when they say, yo, you want to go hit a yard? I was like, yeah, bet. You guys. But they didn't even have the subway they have now.
Yeah.
They were just starting to build that in 87. It wasn't open.
Like the metro?
Yeah, they had no subway.
Okay.
So when they said a yard, I said, yeah, bet. I thought we were going to paint trains. And when I got there, it's an empty lot with a wall. I'm like, where's the yard? You know? But, yeah. Fairfax Yard, I think it was called.
Okay.
That was one I painted a couple times.
Did you ever enter like Belmont Tunnel?
No.
Okay.
Actually, I think I did. Is that
So it's no longer there, but
what's the one by MacArthur Park?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I was there 100%. Because I always remember that because Diana Ross had a song about MacArthur Park.
Gotcha.
Someone left the cake out in the rain. But you got to understand, at the time that I was in LA in 87, I was what y'all call it? I was a clucker. I was messed up. I was in the streets getting high.
Oh, okay.
So I don't remember a lot of what we did, and it's a blur, that time in my life.
Going through that blur, what was the shift point that brought you back into like, okay, I'm getting serious about painting again?
You know, really, I didn't get serious about my artwork again until I was locked up.
Okay.
So when I was incarcerated, you know, all of a sudden I had some time, free time. When you're in jail, you begin to write and
read
draw
books
and
and all
do push-ups and comb your hair, and all of a sudden you become civilized.
Yeah.
All the things you wasn't doing in the street. So in jail, I started drawing a lot, and other cats began to ask me, you know, they want me to do a card for them to send home to their girl or their kids. So I started getting a little money, hustling like that for cigarettes and soups and cookies and things, you know what I mean? Commissary. So I'm designing tattoos for people and cards to send to their family, and, you know, picture frames. They want to hang their picture in their cell or whatever. So I realized that this was something of value that I had, because I'd forgotten about it. And wilding out in the streets and getting high, I forgot all about my talent and my skill and my God-given gift. I abandoned it for a while. So when you got dudes in jail telling you, yo, my man, you got talent. What are you doing in here? You don't belong in here. So shit, nobody belongs in here.
None of us should be in here.
No, right. Nobody belongs in a cage.
Yeah.
Right? So I realized maybe this is my ticket out. Maybe this is my ticket back to sanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at the same time, my daughter was born. And once you have a kid, then you start to think about changing your life, getting back on track. You know what I mean? So my art, graffiti, really helped me get back to sanity.
Okay.
To find my humanity again.
It's a crazy thing, right? How you have to go through some of your lowest points to find yourself again, right?
100%.
To understand that this is something that's in me, but I just had to really, really dig to find it.
Yeah, because I was trying to be something I'm not. I was trying to be a drug dealer, a gangster, you know what I mean? That's not me. What I am is an artist, whether I like it or not. I might want to be a basketball player. I might want to be, you know, somebody else. So accepting who you, and that takes us back to what I was saying about finding your own style, not trying to be someone else. When I went out in the streets and got into things that were not for me, I had a bad result.
Gotcha.
Now that I'm embracing who I am and what I am, you know what I mean? Maybe I'd rather be Bill Gates
Yeah.
But no, I'm KEO X-Men, the graffiti writer. Like it or lump it.
That's who I am type thing.
So let me play the hand I've been dealt, right? And make the best of it.
I want to dive a little bit back into our conversation earlier. You know, coming up as a child, entering this world that's just really gravitated to you. You know, you start meeting some people. You know, you get into some crews that start getting a little bit more serious. I want to dive a little bit into as far as for painting. What were you using to paint your pieces, and how were you going about grabbing your supply?
So, I mean, like most kids, the first cans that I use, I stole out of my father's workshop. You know what I mean? Whatever was on the shelf, spray paint, and then we went to McCrory's in downtown Brooklyn. They had in the basement, it's either Maze or McCrory's, that the basement opened up into the subway station. You could go right into.
Oh, you straight in.
Yeah, and they had the hardware in the basement, and it was cheap paint. It was no name paint. You know, it wasn't Krylon or Rust-Oleum. It was didn't paint, but we could rack it up. So here's where, remember when I told you me being a little white boy with glasses, I wasn't really an asset to a crew?
Yeah.
Once I discovered how to rack, how to steal, and we realized that people profile you.
Yeah.
So being a little white boy, if I dressed a certain way and, you know, played it off, they wouldn't watch me. So I could go in there. We had a portfolio because I was going to art school. We had a big black portfolio like this, and I could stack 50 cans in that motherfucker. Boom, boom, boom. So my boys would go in before me. Now, my boy's tall black dude, right?
Yeah.
They go in and act suspicious. They attract all the security to watch them. I count to 100, and then I go in behind them, and I go straight to the spray paint. They already got the store detective following them. All eyes on them. And I'm free to boom, 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 and we meet outside. So the first paint I was using was McCrory's house brand. Was not very good paint.
Gotcha.
And then it was Krylon and Rust-Oleum. Red Devil sometimes. Red Devil was already hard to find. The original Red Devils, we looked for hardware stores that still had them because it was like lead-based paint.
Yeah.
And when Jimmy Carter was president, he made the OSHA, Occupational Safety Hazard Administration, and they made the paint brands change their formula, take a lot of the toxins out. So those old cans, you know, some mom and pop stores still had them with dust all over them. So we would look for those.
Do you think Krylon and Rust-Oleum became such an iconic spray can for the culture just because that's all that was there, or because they actually signify something when it came to quality and grabbing the can?
There were other brands. They were not the only ones, but they were the leaders. They were the best paint on the market at the time. Rust-Oleum being the best covering and lasting.
Yeah.
Well, Red Devil really, though, if you found the old lead Red Devils, they were even better. Krylon for having the most colors. They had fruity flavors, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were other brands that had really fruity flavors, but it was runny and drippy.
Gotcha.
So sometimes we would underpaint with silver or white from Rust-Oleum and then put there a little mist of the, whatever pink or yellow from Flora Life or these other brands that it wasn't as good.
Gotcha. You know, I got a question for you, brother. You know, you coming from those early stages in New York, painting, racking this paint, and I mean, I know you're fully aware that these brands wanted nothing to do with graffiti, starting with Krylon and Rust-Oleum, right? Mm-hmm. Now in 2025, where Rust-Oleum is finally entering the art space, how does that make you feel?
Good luck to them. I don't, I think it's too little too late, because we reached out to Krylon and Rust-Oleum. When I say we, I mean a lot of graffiti writers in New York reached out to these brands to sponsor them for years, to work with them, to cooperate with them, and they wanted nothing to do with the culture. Never have. So they deny. See what? Once you criminalize artwork, and New York had a war on graffiti,
Okay.
right? Before they had a war on drugs, before they had a war on poverty, before they had a war on terror, they had a war on graffiti first. And you got to understand, this is the full power of the state, the government. MTA is a branch of the government, Metropolitan Transit Authority. The police against 15-year-old kids just creating artwork. Mm-hmm. So why would you wage war against them, right? There's a lot of money in this.
Yeah, yeah.
If they could clean up, and they have, if they could clean up New York, then they could bring in the big money. And they've successfully done that. We've seen it. So once you criminalize something, these brands cannot associate themselves with it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see what you're saying.
It's like if you make bandanas, right?
Yeah.
You're a company that makes bandanas. You don't want to say, hey, we're endorsed by the Crips and the Bloods. They love our product. We're the #1 bandana in the hood. Because they fear a negative association is going to alienate their clientele.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll tell you a story. Bally shoes, right?
Bally shoes.
They were the shoe that we like to wear in the hood. You know, if you weren't wearing sneakers, say you wanted to get in a party, some clubs, they wouldn't let you in with sneakers.
Yeah.
So we wanted to wear Playboys or Clark Wallabies or Bally's because they were comfortable and they looked fly.
Okay.
And they had a rubber sole like a sneaker, right? So I went to the company Bally's when their corporate office for the United States is in Westchester.
Okay.
And I approached them when Slick Rick was just getting out of jail. Remember when Slick Rick was locked up?
Yeah.
I said, listen, now is a good time. I could help you guys with some marketing. We do some product placement. We get Slick Rick and Dana Dane and the old school guys, and you get a few of the new school guys, whoever that is, Ghostface Killer, whatever, wearing your shoe. You know, do a little, get it to the right people. It could blow up for you. They were scared to alienate their core customer.
Oh, wow.
The old white man with a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's not worth it, even if you're talking about millions, right? For Rust-Oleum to say, we endorse graffiti artists. Even if they could make millions in that, they fear they're going to lose their core customer, who they believe is the old lady in the backyard spray painting her lawn furniture.
Gotcha.
Or the kid who wants to do his bicycle, right? Or your barbecue, spray painted black, or your engine in your car.
Yeah, yeah.
That's their core customer. They don't believe that they make that much money from graffiti artists. So now they're seeing other brands, European brands, embrace the culture and selling for more. They're selling for $10 a can US.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
By working with graffiti artists. Now they want a piece of that pie. It's too little, too late, my man. You can't.
I agree.
You can't deny us for 30 years, and then want to embrace us. We still remember. We got a long memory.
Very long. I want to dive into, you know, we talked about you coming up as a kid, you know, how it was to get into being accepted with the other writers and at the yards and stuff like that, and entering the subway painting movement. I want to get a little bit into the subway movement for anybody out there that, you know, that never will have the chance to paint a subway or be in a yard of a subway. Can we get a little bit into that? Like, you know, you enter these crews, you're painting the train yards, which is the subway yards.
Yeah.
I mean, meeting some of the greats out there, right? Some of the greatest to date. How was that?
Man, I'm a fan. I'm still a fan of some of these cats. A lot are passing away. Rest in peace. I want to say rest in peace to Joey TDS, who just passed away
Rest in
last
peace.
night, and my man Kano was the week before. I'm at the age where we're losing a lot of our legendary cats,
Yeah.
the cats who I looked up to growing up. But I'm still a fan. This is funny because I work with a lot of the newer writers, the younger cats. I embrace them. I like their style, but I still think that the pinnacle, like 79, 1980, 81, 82, that was the height of style.
Yeah.
Nothing has really been improved upon. Technique, now remember we talked about the difference between style and technique. Technique has gotten better. Cats are using new paint, new caps, new techniques. Cats are rappelling down the side of a building 30 stories. But stylistically, I don't think I'm still a fan of the same, like T-Kid and Part and these guys who I looked up to when I was a kid. They're still burning anybody out there.
In your opinion, brother, what do you think has changed that? Going from a very stylistic individual where like you want to be the best you can with the dopest style to now it's kind of like style is not a priority.
Style is still a priority for me and a lot of cats I know. There's a whole movement of anti-style,
Yeah.
which there were always cats who were just about bombing, okay? I went writing with a guy named Chris 217.
Okay.
Chris 217 did not care about doing pieces or being the best or having, he cared about being up. And he used to write with, the shoe dye that had the applicator look like a big Q-tip.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all he ever used. His shit was ugly, it was drippy, but it was everywhere. So that's one mentality or one approach. Okay? Famously in the film Star Wars, you had Cap, who said, I don't care about being the biggest or the best. My goal is more. For me, that didn't interest me. I was never the most up guy. I was never the king of anything. I never took over all city. But I wanted my pieces to be influential. I wanted people to see my style and be like, yo, that's... Because I looked at guys like Knock 167.
Okay.
He didn't have more pieces than anybody on the line, but if he did one piece, people talked about it over months. People copied it. You understand? So you did 100, and nobody cares. He did one, and everybody's going, ooh, changed the game.
What is that? Why? How do you do that?
Right. So with music, it's the same way. You got some artists who put out a record every month. Nobody cares. Then you got Sade comes out every 10 years with an album, one album. People are waiting because it's quality, right?
Yeah.
Just Ice and Mantronics just made a record. They haven't made a record together in 30 fucking years. But it's still
monumental.
Yeah. And it changes the game.
People still wait for it and be like, oh, I gotta listen to it. What to do with it.
And it's groundbreaking. When Rakim says a rhyme, it influences 100 other writers.
Yeah.
So when Dondi would do a new car, it influenced 100 dudes would start writing that day when they saw that. Yo, that's what I want to do.
Did you have an opportunity to paint with him?
No, I didn't paint with him. I met him. I eventually, by the time I got down, because I knew James Top.
Okay.
And CIA came out of TOP, right?
Gotcha.
So James kind of brought Dondi into the game. But by the time I got down with TOP, Dondi was already quitting writing. He was going to Japan and Europe selling paintings.
Okay.
So he was moving away from painting the trains. He's a little bit older than me. I wish I would have got to paint a train with him. I was in shows with him in the gallery, in the fun gallery. I got to meet him. I used to talk to him. It's funny because I would try to talk to Dondi about style. I'm like a little kid bothering him, asking him about this and this and this. And he would want to talk about bicycles, Shimano components and things like this, which I knew nothing about.
Okay.
He was very into bike racing. So I would see him in Washington Square Park, and he's wearing the full-on bicycle gear, you know what I mean? And I didn't know nothing about that, but I would listen to him talk about this just to be around him. I thought there was some secret.
They in between the lines.
Yeah. Like, maybe I need to get a bicycle, then
Yeah.
I'll be good.
You know, may he rest in peace. By the way, Gandhi, rest in peace. Brought a lot to the
Rest
culture.
in peace. Yes, 100%.
You know, I wanted to get into Style Wars, brother.
Uh-huh.
You know, coming from, you're part of the culture. You're painting lines. You know, you're out there in the yards, and now that they're putting a whole movie together, and in regards to what you're doing with people that you know of, how was that for you coming up, and how was the whole process of the movie?
I had mixed feelings because I never wanted to be on camera. Like what we're doing here.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, if you brought out a camera, I would hide my face. I thought I was an outlaw.
Yeah.
I wanted, right? So when the books and the movies came out, of course I was fascinated with them. I had the book, I watched the movie, but I felt like it was giving away secrets.
Gotcha.
I thought it should be kept underground,
Okay.
right? Only for selective people. It's like when Bruce Lee began to teach in America, teach Westerners. A lot of people in China were mad. Yo, you can't teach them our secrets, right? That's not for them.
That's for us.
So I thought that it should be, I'll tell you the truth. My boy, his name was Mike. He wrote Cess 157. I went to high school with him, 1980, 81. Peace, Mike. I hope you're doing well. So he's the guy on the rooftop. You know the scene with Scheme, where there's a guy with a hoodie on, and he's asking Scheme, he says, so tell him what you did last night. And he said, we did 3 whole cars. So
Yeah.
all you see is crime in the city with the
Yeah.
police, right? The guy with the hoodie asking him the question, that's Cess 157. So me and Cess used to hang out, and we would leave school, and we go to the bench, or we go to Henry's photo studio. So he asked me to come the day they were shooting in the bench. He said, yo, they're filming a movie at the bench. Come on. I don't want to be in no movie. I'm going back to Brooklyn. So I had the opportunity to be there while they filmed. Now, this, looking back, could have been a life-changing experience, because the dudes who are in that movie, like Scene, UA, they could call themselves the Godfather, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's on your resume forever. They're cemented in history.
And they could have been on yours.
I don't have that. I never came out in a movie or a book. So as far as most of the world knows, I didn't even exist, right? So there's a lot of names that were as famous as Scene and Lee, just didn't make it into the movie.
Gotcha.
There were cats on other lines that didn't have the opportunity. So those who chose to do those things, in hindsight, it was a wise decision. If they parlayed it, now they can sell a book or do whatever they want.
Do you know how they went about finding writers for the movie? Did they just kind of go and like ask whoever, or was it kind of like an artist call? How did they go about it?
So the way I understand that is, and again, this is secondhand information because I wasn't there, but the way it was told to me, that Henry Chalfant was taking photos of train cars.
Okay.
And I guess Kel and these guys, Randy, I hope I'm telling the story right, they saw him.
Taking pictures.
Yo, you're taking pictures of my graffiti? Boom. So they developed a relationship with him. He had a studio in Soho. So he got to know these writers. And soon, I went to his studio with Cess 157. And dudes knew that he was taking photos of the cars. They start putting his name. You see there's famous cars that say, yo, what up, Henry? Right?
Yeah.
And if you brought him the original outline, he would trade you for prints of the photos of your car. So Henry has a great collection of outlines. So when him and I guess Tony Silva, rest in peace, made the film,
Yeah.
they already knew certain writers. But they were primarily focused on certain lines of the IRT.
Oh, I see.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Gotcha.
Okay, not the 7s, which went to Queens so much, not the A's, the F, the D, the J, and the M, which had beautiful artwork on it. They focused on a certain, it's like one neighborhood in LA,
Gotcha.
right? Or one bus line. You're only going to see certain writers.
Yeah.
There's other writers on another line that never made the movies, never made the books. Doesn't mean they weren't good or up or influential.
It was just they were focused just on that line.
Right. So it shows a great snapshot of a certain place and time. It doesn't show the whole picture. There's another documentary earlier by Manny Kirshheimer called Stations of the Elevated that shows a whole nother time where you see Slave and the generation before Dondi, the generation before Lee.
Is it still out there?
100%.
And this is before Wasta.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, now new photographs are coming to light from other neighborhoods, and there's always, you don't know who has an old film reel or
Put it away
a
somewhere.
box of photos, negatives, that they've never published.
There's some stuff out there, huh?
Yeah, 100%. The whole story has not been told.
Us getting into movies, Bomb in the System. Bomb in the System was a very...
Bomb the System.
Bomb the System, sorry. Bomb the System was a very impactful movie for me coming up as a child because it's something that, I seen and I was like, whoa, they got a movie about this now. But, when I was a kid, I got into graffiti in 2005, right?
Okay, yeah.
So when the movie was coming, when I got my hands on the movie, I was like, oh, damn, they got a movie about this. Can you talk to me a little bit about your role in the movie?
So, the cats who did MF Doom's first music videos, that's how I met them.
Yeah.
They were NYU film students in college.
Okay.
And Doom brought them on board to shoot his music video. He saw the talent in them. They made this movie, a cat named Adam Balalo, Ben Ricky, and I'm forgetting everybody's name. Anyway, that's how I met them. So when they wanted to make a feature-length film, I already knew them from us doing the MF Doom videos.
Okay.
If you see My Favorite Ladies, I'm in that video with Doom. And Question Mark with Curious George, they did that one. They did all his first videos. So they asked me to be on board as a consultant and they wanted me to do the graffiti behind the scenes. I wasn't supposed to be an actor in the movie. I didn't want to be an actor in the movie. They convinced me to play a small part.
Yeah.
I only had 2 lines, I think. But it turned out that I played the older brother of the main character who dies. So I'm only seen in a flashback. But it turned out that that character was very important to the whole story. So they talk about Lazaro throughout the whole movie. He's like the main character's reason for doing what he does.
He's writing because he wants to be like his brother.
Right. So even though I'm not in the whole film, I'm in the whole film. My influence is felt through the whole film. And I did the titles in the beginning when you see the letters animate and you hear the beat and it starts dripping. Yeah. I did all the handwritten titles.
Bomb the System.
And I did a lot of the graffiti, the background stuff, And I also helped them, they wanted to bring other writers on board as actors. I think I brought them Bones Malone, my brother Bones, Peace Bones.
So the guys that play the main characters, they wrote it in real life or just for the movie?
So the lead actor
Yeah.
who plays Bless, he's actually from Philly.
Okay.
But he was a writer in Philly.
Gotcha.
Which has a different style than New York.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of help them with the New York style. But a lot of the other writers, other actors, are, Gano's in it. Gano is a writer from Staten Island down with the Wu-Tang. Bones Malone is in it. A lot of cats. So Mark Weber, That's the lead actor's name. Great actor, good dude, peace mark. And the cat that played his little homie wasn't a writer. He was an actor. In fact, he plays in that, what's the basketball movie with Jesus Shuttleworth?
I remember the name of it.
Anyway, he's a great actor. He wasn't a graffiti writer. So when those guys, when you see them doing something,
Yeah.
I actually paint it, cut, and then they go in. You know what I mean? So I'm like the stunt double.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that movie was filmed illegally. They didn't have permits.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's hard to get permits. You need big budget and money in
Yeah.
New York, because they have to bring the cops and shut down the block or whatever.
Yeah.
So we just did it. It's called guerrilla style.
Guerrilla style.
Yeah, man. So we just jumped on the roof and did our thing. A lot of the graffiti is actually illegal.
Did this movie hit the theaters? Like it came out in theaters?
So they were first in the film festivals.
Okay, gotcha.
And I remember they wanted to get it done for the Tribeca Film Festival. So the film that they showed in the theater was not quite finished. They had to rush. They were still editing the night before the festival, and they rushed to get it there. So it wasn't as good as he would have liked it to be. He ran out of time. But then it went straight to DVD. It went to Netflix.
So it did have a distribution.
Netflix, yeah. And you can still see it at, 2 a.m. or something. They show it all the time.
There's not many movies when it comes to graffiti, but that was a good one. Bomb the System, for anybody out there that hasn't watched it, make sure you check it out.
Great film.
Great film.
Great film. So I got to fly around to go to some of the film festivals with that movie.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, traveling to these. We went to the Midwest, the Kansas, the Tallgrass Film Festival, and I got Gano and Bones Malone, and we're wilding out. It was like the circus came to town.
Having fun, huh?
Yeah, man. Ladies loved us everywhere we went. We were superstars.
I can't imagine, man. Amazing time. Great movie. I wanted to hop into, brother, MF Doom.
Rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. How did you guys meet, and how did the iconic mask happen?
So Babito Garcia introduced us, but it turned out that we came from the same lineage. We knew all the same people, because the way that KMD, which was MF Doom's first group, got on was through a group called Third Base.
Yeah.
Okay, and those were guys that I kind of put on in the game. I introduced Pete and Serge to each other. I introduced them to my DJ at the time, which was Clark Kent, and that became Third Base later. First, we were called the Serving Generals. So I knew Pete, and I knew him through my original graffiti partner, Sake, TPC. And they went on to produce a lot of great music in the 90s, early 90s. Curious George, KMD, Nas, OC. No. Yeah. So between Serge and Pete Nice, they were responsible for a lot. I'm forgetting some of the names, but very influential music. Count Bass D, Peace Dwight. A lot of great music in the 90s came from them. And we had the first radio show on Columbia University, WKCR, with my DJ Clark Kent, may he rest in peace, and Pete Nice. And later on it became Babito and Stretch doing KCR. And they were all, it's a lineage. So when I came back to New York, I told you I was gone for a long time. I was locked up. I was getting high. I came back in the 90s. 96 maybe?
96.
97. Late 90s. And Babito had a little store in the Lower East Side called Footwork. And he had a record label he was putting out. Just white label underground records. It was called Fondulum.
Fondulum?
Fondulum with two bolas on the cover. You fondle these nuts, basically. That's Babito for you. anyway, he put out Doom's first records.
Oh, so they already knew each other.
Post KMD, yes. So they were just singles, 12-inch white label singles. And Doom wanted to do an album, and Bob wanted to do an album with him. And Doom wanted to have artwork, full color artwork.
Okay.
Fondulum had never done artwork before, only white label, right? So they didn't really have the budget to do all that kind of stuff. This was a new adventure for them. So I was hanging out at Babito's Footwork in the Lower East Side, and Doom was there, and Doom was talking to Bob, and yo, we want to do boom, boom, boom. I want artwork, and he had this idea to make a gatefold album like Miles Davis, Bitches Brew. And he wanted to do something really fly. Yeah. And he was like, but we need a good artist. And Bob points to me and he said, yo, my man KEO right here, he's an artist.
He could rock it out for you real quick.
So we started talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that, boom. Because at the time, I was doing graphics, right? I had already done some albums for Loud Records. I did Inspect the Decks logo.
Really?
Yeah, I did Mob Deep, Uncontrolled Substance. I had done a few things for I even worked on Tash's from the Alcoholics from here, his solo project for Loud, but they didn't use the design I brought. But anyway, I was doing that. I was designing album covers and logos, and so it wasn't a stretch. And Bob was like, yo, stretching Bob. Anyway, what was I saying? Bob was like, yeah, my man KEO can do the artwork. We started talking and we immediately hit it off. And then we realized that we knew the same people. And it was like, oh, shit.
You know this guy, I know him too.
Right. So even though I had been away for a while, we were family. It's like if you got an uncle who's been locked up and he comes to the barbecue and it's your first time meeting him. Oh, shit.
Oh, what up, man? What up, man?
You're still family.
Yeah.
Right? You never met.
100%.
Okay, so he knew of me, I knew of him. And we began immediately clicking. He would sleep at my house. We would fucking, at the time, I had like this, upstairs studio. Me and wifey downstairs. And upstairs I had my art studio. And he would crash there when he was in New York. And we would just work on graphics, artwork. And within a very short period, we did Operation Doomsday, all the Special Herbs records, the KMD album, Black Bastards. We did MF Grimm's solo album, The Downfall of Iblis. We did Monster Island Czar's album. We did Rodin Theophany. But man, we did like 15 albums in a week.
In 1 week?
It seemed like a week. Maybe it's a month.
Okay.
We were banging them out.
That's a lot of work in 1 week.
Well, you have to understand that MF Grimm, not MF Doom, MF Grimm, Percy Carey, Peace Percy, he was like the business behind it. So Doom was more the creative, but Percy was financing the thing. Gotcha. And he had to turn himself in to go to prison for Rockefeller laws. Oh. So he had already been convicted.
Yeah.
He just had to turn himself in to do his sentence. And he was going to do 3 to life under the Rockefeller laws. So
3 to life?
3 to life.
So you didn't know he was coming home or not?
We didn't know if he was ever coming home. He had the L on the end. So we were rushing to get all this done.
Yeah.
You understand? We had a limited window. We wanted to make sure to get his album out before he went in. And I'm glad to say he's home today. He's free. He's still making music. Go check him out. MF Grimm.
MF Grimm.
Incredible.
How did the mask come into play?
So from the very first, I said Doom had been in a group before called KMD when he was a kid. So he knew something about what it was to be a star, to be recognized as a child star. He didn't want that. He wanted to be anonymous.
Yeah.
So at the time, I don't know if you remember Wu-Tang's first record, Protect Your Neck.
Yeah.
Ghostface used to keep his face covered with a white stocking mask.
Okay.
If you see the pictures, he doesn't show his face. Doom was like, yo, I want to do that.
That's what I want to do right there.
Because being famous is a headache. Everywhere you go, people recognize you, right?
Oh, there goes that one guy.
Right. So he wanted to be like a graffiti writer, where people know your name,
but they don't know who you are.
They hear the music, they see the art, but they don't know who's right.
Yeah.
So you could live your life.
100%. Yeah.
So his first shows that he did, he wore a bandana over his face, or he wore a pantyhose like a stocking, like he was a bank robber. But the whole time he was like, yo, we got to figure out a mask. And he had this Marvel Comics Dr. Doom story. Because if you know from the Fantastic Four, Dr. Doom, the industry ruined him.
Yeah.
He had, his science was too deep for them.
Gotcha.
And they shunned him. He was with Reed Richards in college, and they kicked him out. They blacklisted him.
Yeah.
So Doom related to that. And he said, I want to be like the supervillain. So the first mask that we got was one of these cheap Halloween plastic masks, you know, with the rubber band in the back you wore when you were a kid. And I spray painted it with silver Rust-Oleum, and I cut the shape with a razor, with an X-Acto knife, box cutter or something. And then I drew on it with a Sharpie, the shading. And you see that mask in his first 3 videos. He wears that.
Is that mask still out there today?
No, because it was cheap plastic, it got destroyed. In fact, the cat we're talking about, the director of the videos, the cat who may bomb the system, I heard he sat on it.
No
and
way.
Broke it. Yeah.
Ah.
So it wasn't gonna last. It wasn't made to last. It was a cheap 99-cent store Chinese plastic mask. So while we had that one, we were looking for a better one, a more permanent solution. So we were shopping, we were going around, and it's funny, we were racking, we were boosting.
Yeah.
And I'm living in Manhattan at the time. I said, yo, there's all kind of antique stores. Maybe we could find a suit of armor. You know, what some people have in their house, like a knight standing in the corner, a life-size suit of armor. I said, maybe we could get that mask, a metal mask, like Dr. Doom had. So we went by this comic book store called Forbidden Planet.
Forbidden Planet.
And at that time, a movie with Russell Crowe called Gladiator had just come out. In fact, they just made a Gladiator 2 now.
The original Gladiator.
The first one came out.
Oh, that's a good movie.
What was that, 99, 2000?
Yeah, around there.
So they had the mask from that movie, the whole helmet with the spikes. And it was heavy, it was metal, it was the real thing, like a suit of armor. And we stole that shit out the window. And I took it to a welder that I knew on 2nd Avenue, an artist, a German cat, who had the oxyacetylene welding torches, because he used to make crazy sculptures. And I drew on there where to cut it and what modifications to make, and we made the first mask.
Oh, wow.
From a Russell Crowe. So here's the funny part of that story. Years later, they try to come out with Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
They show the trailer on social media, and everybody goes, that's MF Doom mask. You know when Jay-Z said, I make a Yankee hat more famous than the Yankees can? He made the Gladiator mask more famous than Russell Crowe. He stole that shit from him. That's forever going to be the MF Doom mask.
Man, I seen the new, what is the name of the guy that plays Iron Man in the movies?
Talking about Robert Downey Jr.?
I don't know what his name is. I just
Played,
know him Iron Man.
He played Iron Man, and he played Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, when he's gonna be the Dr. Doom, and he takes out the mask, and everybody goes bananas.
Okay.
I thought that was crazy.
Well, Robert Downey Jr., he used to hang out with my graffiti partner, Metro, who was named Miles Carter.
Yeah.
His father was Ron Carter, plays the upright bass. He's on that Tribe Called Quest song, Bugging Out, You Bugging Out.
Okay.
You know, he's on that whole album, The Low End Theory, Peace to Ron Carter. His son died. That was my graffiti partner, Metro. Miles, rest in peace, Miles. He was best friends with Robert Downey Jr. So Robert, holler at me if you want to work on that Doom story. We can do that. I'll make you a mask.
Yeah, man, it was dope, bro. Like, then nobody knew who Doctor Doom was gonna be, so he shows up all dressed up as Doctor Doom,
Right.
and he just takes a mask off, and it's like I'm from Iron Man. What his name was? Robert, he said.
Robert Downey Jr.
And,
Okay.
then everybody goes, ah! But I mean, rest in peace, MF Doom, though. May he
Yes.
rest in peace. He's definitely missed.
That was my brother.
Very iconic guy.
Hilarious dude too. You would have loved hanging out with him. He would have you laughing all day, bro.
His journey will forever live in the hip hop culture. Got 3 questions for you before getting out of here, brother. One being, how was it showcasing in a gallery with Basquiat? And how do you say his name? Basquiat?
Okay. I don't know.
I don't know. Proper.
Yeah, I guess Basquiat.
Yeah,
it's
Basquiat.
French, Haitian.
And Keith Haring.
You know, when I was a little kid, man, I was in a group show, and there was a ton of. It was like 500 artists.
Yeah.
Like how this is, right?
Yeah.
All different pieces from all different artists. So it was at the Fun Gallery, and it was 1983. It was called Graffiti. Thanks a lot.
Graffiti, thanks a lot.
A
Okay.
famous show. And yes, Keith Haring was in it, and Basquiat was in it, and some of what we called the East Village artists.
East Village
Right?
artist, yeah.
They were not graffiti writers to me. So I wasn't that impressed with their work.
Okay.
At the time, you know, Dondi was in there. TAC FBA was in there. Zephyr, Revolt, Futura, Hayes, Peace Hayes, right? These were the cats I was like, I didn't really relate to what Keith Haring was doing. Wasn't my thing.
Okay.
So now people say, "Oh, you were in a show with Basquiat," and it's like, okay,
A lot of people debate that he was a graffiti writer. Others say he wasn't. What is your take on that?
again, we have to define graffiti writing because, like we talked about in the beginning, people have been writing on walls forever. But there's a certain style that came out of the New York subway system that we know of as graffiti writing.
100%.
You know, I went to school with Basquiat. I was in class with his sister, Janine. They're from my neighborhood. He's about 6 years older than me. So he was partners with a friend of mine named Al Diaz. And they started writing SAMO, S-A-M-O.
SAMO.
And it was a two-man tag, a group effort. They both started writing it. Now, Al Diaz was a real graffiti writer. He wrote Bomb 1.
Okay.
Old school, Lower East Side, Brooklyn. He did his thing. He painted subway trains. He was a real graffiti writer. When they started doing the same old thing, it was something different. And they would tell you that. Their motivation was not to be style writers on the subway. They were trying to make a statement, do something artistic. And then Basquiat moved away from that and stopped writing altogether. He became a painter. So I think he would have told you himself he wasn't a graffiti writer.
Gotcha.
But I don't know. I can't speak for that man. He's not here.
May he rest in peace.
Yes, and great painter. He did his thing. He shook up the world, and he continues to. And you know, I came out here to L.A. when his sisters Janine and Lisette, who was in class with my brother at PS 38, they put on a show. And my boy Just Blaze was DJing, and I got to go to the opening event, and I saw Janine for the first time in 35 years. And, you know, the family is keeping his legacy alive, and it's a beautiful thing, man.
Very beautiful, man. Shout out to them.
Yeah, I'm
And shout
glad
out
that
to
they
family.
have the rights to the estate. Because it's what I'm dealing with MF Doom's family. You know, there's a lot of bootleg. If you go on Google right now and type in MF Doom T-shirt, you can buy a bootleg T-shirt from a million different companies.
Yeah.
But his family doesn't get the money from that. So I want folks to support his wife and kids, his estate, his family. Go to Gas Draws, GASDRAWLS.com, gasdraws.com. That's his official website. You want to buy music, merchandise, mfdoom.com, gasdraws.com, rhymesayers.com. That's the only place to get like this.
Official merchandise.
And that supports his wife and kids. So if you say you're a fan, don't steal from his family, you know what I mean?
I would like to buy a mask. Like, does he sell those on his website?
Nah, man, we never will. Never.
It would be dope to have one though. Not the exact same one, but you know what I mean, like a collectible.
Yeah,
that would be dope to have.
Yeah. They put some out when they did the food 20th anniversary edition. They put some plastic masks out.
Okay, dope. I'm sure they're out there. I'm gonna look into them.
Yeah, I'll send you one.
Thank you. I appreciate you, brother. I also wanted to ask you, to your knowledge, brother, one of the best pieces that you've ever seen on a wall.
On a wall?
Yeah. If you can name one.
See, some of my favorite pieces were on the train. They weren't on walls, but there were some great ones on walls too.
Let's say train. One of your favorite pieces on train.
I was sitting in Atlantic Avenue train station, benching, just like you and me are sitting here now with my boy, and Dondi and Knock did a car that said Bus Boy, and
Bus
you've seen
Boy.
it's famous. It's in it's in Subway Art. Henry Chalfant photo of it. I saw that thing brand new, and the character by Knock looked like a bus boy. He had like a blue uniform on.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's a bus boy. And it was brand new. You could still smell the paint coming off of it.
Wow.
The windows were still in. It had not been, it must have been done the night before.
Okay.
You know, because we used to cut school and go to Atlantic Avenue and sit on the bench early in the morning. And we
Gotcha.
stay there till 2:45 so we could pretend we were at school all day. So I got to see most of those famous cars you see in that book. I saw them in real life, and a lot more that never made the books. But that was one that really blew me away and influenced me. And there was another that was case 2 and seen called Swivel and Swirl.
Swivel and swirl.
And I loved it when people flipped different names.
Yeah.
And the two names seem to go together, right? Swivel and Swirl, Bus and Boy, right? They had the similar letters and length. So I was always trying to think of names, you know, like me and my boy could do. So there was there was a dog food came out at that time called Kibbles and Bits. And I said, yo, let's do Kibbles and Bits. And he was like, that's stupid, bro. The fucking dog food, you know? But it had a cartoon character in the commercial, a cartoon dog, and they said, Kibbles and Bits, Kibbles and Bits. I'm gonna get me some Kibbles and Bits. So I was like, yeah, we'll do the character. You know, I was really trying to convince my boys. They always wanted to do their own name. I never wanted to do my own name. I always wanted to pick aliases because these guys that I looked up to, they had so many. Case 2, he did cars under a million different names. And he would do his friends' names for them and other people's pieces. And, you know, you knew it was him by the style. Even you couldn't read some of these cars, but you knew, you could identify his style. He didn't have to write his name on there. I wanted to be that guy that you just knew, oh yeah, KEO did that shit. Even though it said Kibbles. I thought that was fly.
That's dope, man. That is really dope that someone could distinguish something just by the style, not the name.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to be that recognizable. you know.
2 more questions I got for you before we get on out of here. One, for anybody out there that's pursuing graffiti in 2025, what can you say to them?
Oh man, give it up, get a job. No, I'm kidding. Do it illegally. Graffiti writing is not meant, if you're looking to get into it to get rich or to get a job or a gallery show, that may come in the future, but that can't be your motivation. Graffiti writing is supposed to be illegal, anti-establishment, revolutionary. Okay? So a lot of the messages that I saw when I was a kid were political in nature. They were revolutionary. They said feed the children, stop the bomb, save the worker. All these different, voice of the ghetto. They were political slogans, and graffiti, just in its nature, just by its existence, was revolutionary. So now I feel like it's being co-opted, and has been for a long time, by major corporations, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned Rust-Oleum now wants to get into the game, okay? But Nike and these folks have been doing it for a long time. So don't allow a corporation to own you or guide you or mold you or make you. Don't get into the game because you want to do a collaboration with Louis Vuitton or Nike.
Yeah.
Do it illegally. Do it for yourself. Find out if it's really for you. Go paint some trains. Be safe, be careful. I hope you don't get busted. But if you're not taking risks, if you're not breaking laws, you're not doing graffiti. You're just another artist. Okay? And that's cool too. You can be an artist, but don't tell me you're a writer. Because writers write. Writers write their name on the wall, on the train, illegally. That's what writers do. You want to be a street artist? That's something else. You want to be a fine artist in the gallery? That's something else too. And there's nothing wrong with that. But don't get it confused. Don't get it twisted.
100%.
So I'm out there every day doing what I do. And I still do it. And I've gone to jail for this, and I've bled for this, and I've had to sweat and run, and I've gotten injured. I'm climbing fences, you know what I mean? If you're not willing to do that, maybe this ain't for you. It's like boxing. A lot of people want to do cardio, fitness boxing, right? But they don't want to spar. They don't want to get hit. They don't want to bleed.
They just want to be the ones hitting.
Right. And that's okay. If you want to get in shape, say that. I want a good cardio workout. Don't say you're a boxer, because somebody might take you up on it, okay?
And try to press those buttons.
Yeah, man.
Last question I got for you, brother, before we got out of here. Favorite shoe to paint in of all time?
Favorite shoe to paint in is whichever one y'all send me for free. Yo, big up to my sponsor, Saucony. If it's free, it's for me. Nah, I'm kidding. These are very comfortable shoes, though. I painted them. I love them. Favorite shoe to paint in of all times would probably be the one I started in, which was the Pro Keds 69er.
Oh, that
Super Pro Keds.
Super Pro Kids.
Because they didn't have all these fancy shoes. There was no leather shoes when I started. It was Converse.
Gotcha.
And Pro Keds and PF Flyers.
Dope, man. Man, again, I'm really honored to sit here with you today. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a blessing to be here with you today. Thank you for speaking to my audience. Is there any shout outs you want to give out before we get on out of here?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Joey TDS, rest in peace, and to Mo, his lovely lady. My condolences to you. And I want to give a shout out to Kano Love, rest in peace, and to his son Ronnie Roan, and to all the writers who have passed away. Stan 153, Nick 707, all my brothers, man, cats I love. that are no longer here with us, I'm going to keep your name alive. Clark Kent, I'm going to keep your name alive. I'm not going to let the world forget you. MF Doom. You know what I'm saying? Your name lives on. And that's really what this thing is about. So those of us who are still here, shout yourself out and take care of your health, man. We're all getting older. There is no retirement fund for old graffiti writers. Make sure your family doesn't have to beg money to bury you. Take care of your health, please.
100%. I want to give a shout out to Overspray Supply here in the city of Pomona.
Yes.
If you're in downtown Pomona, make sure you check them out. Grab yourself some paint. They got a gallery, spray paint, supplies, streetwear, and so much more. They also are doing special artist talks, and they're having artists from all over the globe come here and giving you the opportunity to meet them. So make sure you check them out. Overspray Supply.
Overspray is my favorite spot because I'm sleeping right here, man. They let me live. And Justin, who runs this place,
Shout
the
out to
owner,
Justin.
he's a man of integrity. He does good business, and I wouldn't say that about just anybody, man. I endorse Overspray 100%.
And also, make sure to head over to gotnocontrol.com. Check out our merchandise. Grab yourself a t-shirt, a hoodie, and so much more. And if not, it's always free to just like and subscribe. Show us some love. If you guys want a part 2, give me 500 comments, and I'll figure it out. Till next time.
Part 2.
Much
Peace,
love.
peace.
Peace.